Hi and welcome. I'm trying to learn history, today the Phoenicians, and after we've done with, we're gonna do extensor carpi ulnaris strength training. And if you participate in the extensor carpi ulnaris strength training, then it's that you're always a solid part of your. Now, that is part 2 of the Phoenicians, and now we want to do one thing. Here was written, no, it wasn't here. It was in biography about Turkey and Asia. It was not. So, the Phoenicians. Now we want to go over the informations, we want to do something else. We're going to go over the informations and try to gather the informations together, which we need to make our presentations about the Phoenicians. Around 5,000 years ago, there were Semitic peoples such as the Canaanites living on the eastern Mediterranean coast and built the great city of Byblos. Okay, 5,000 years ago, through the people called Canaanites, the city Byblos was built at the eastern part of the Mediterranean Sea. Then, 3,000 years ago, the people living there in Byblos became known as Phoenicians. The word Phoenicians comes from phoenix, the Greek word for a purple dye made famous by these people. And we have an explanation to it. The dye for which the Phoenicians were famous was made from the shells of murex snails. Okay. So we're going to explain first, I think 5,000 years ago, the Canaanites building the city of Byblos. We're going to say that when 3,000 years ago there were the people called Phoenicians living, and they made a dye, so to dye something, from the shells of the snail's murex. So there's a murex snail, and that snail has a shell. And out of that shell there is the phoenix made. That's the Greek word for that dye, and that is why these people are called Phoenicians. Murex is the name of the snail. Murex. The Phoenicians were great sea traders. Their ports of Tyre and Sidon bustled with ships carrying goods from all over the known world. Phoenicians were master seafarers. Broad merchant ships called gaulos carried goods. Many order-rowing galleys defended the ports from attacks. Okay, then we're going to say something about the seafaring thing. After that, the name and the place. They had merchant ships, which were broader and were carrying goods, for example, of the ports Tyre and Sidon. It's the murex snail, and Tyre and Sidon are the names of 2 ports. And from that they were carrying goods all over the world in broad ships. For example, using wool from Mesopotamia and flax and linen from Egypt, the Phoenicians made cloth. They also made jewelry from important gems, metals and ivory. They had wool from Mesopotamia, it is Tyre and Sidon and murex, wool from Mesopotamia, and flax and linen from Egypt, and out of them they made cloth. Cloth did they make. The Phoenicians made cloth. And not just cloth, but also jewelry were they transporting around. They imported gems, metals and ivory from it. Okay, the next thing. They had galleys, many ordered galleys, and they were defending the ports, Tyre and Sidon, for example. And they set up colonies, an empire-like colonies, as far as to Spain in Cadiz. And they also made a city in Carthage, on the other side basically, Carthage. The greatest Phoenician colony was the city of Carthage in what is now Tunisia, in today's Tunisia, Carthage. And the other thing, in 600 before Christ, maybe we're going to say the number, Phoenician sailors sailed from the Red Sea right around Africa and back into the Mediterranean Sea. The Phoenicians invented the alphabet and gave English-speaking humans the word two. The Phoenician word alpha, ox, and beth, house, became the Greek letters alpha and beta. The word Bible and the prefix bibli, meaning books, comes from the city of Byblos. Okay, the city Byblos, that is the origin, the name of the city is the origin of the word Bible and also the prefix bibli. And the Phoenicians had the word alpha, which was an ox, the cattle ox, an animal. Word aleph. And Beth, which means house, ox and house, aleph and Beth. And they became the first two letters of the Greek alphabet, alpha and beta. Let's start the presentation and look how far we come. Okay, first the 5000 Canaanites Bibles, the name maybe. Then the name Phoenix for the die of the Murics, the ports Tyre and Sidon, the ships the Broad and the many old rowing, up to Cadiz and Carthage and Tunisia, sailing around the world, 2006 Red Sea and Bengal, and Aleph, Beth and Ox, and that would be the... It's a lot. The Phoenicians. 5,000 years ago, there were the Canaanites, and they built the city Byblos at the eastern part of the Mediterranean Sea. And then 3,000 years ago, there were people living, they were called the Phoenicians, because they made a dye out of the shell of a snail called Murex, a purple dye. And the Greek called this dye Phoenix. And that is the name of the people Phoenix, that is the name of the people Phoenicians. Other names also got into the language, for example, two into the English language, TW, the TOO, and also Aleph, which was the name by the Phoenicians for an ox, the animal, and also Beth, which meant house. And these two, Aleph and Beth, are basically then with alpha and beta, the beginning of the Greek alphabet. And also the city Byblos, that became the origin for the words Bibli, Bible, and Bibli, the prefix Bibli. Now, these people there, the Phoenicians, they did not only made this out of this murex snail, out of this shell of it, the dye phoenix, but they also imported wool from Mesopotamia and flax and linen from Egypt and made them cloth out of it, but they also imported ivory and steel to make jewelry. Now, these goods they were transporting from their ports, for example, Tyre and Sidon, out of into the world with broad ships. And they had galleys, many old galleys, which were protecting the ports against invading armies. And the empire was also built out. They had colonies up to Cadiz in Spain and also in Carthage, today's Tunisia. And 2,600 years ago, there did have been once sailed from the Red Sea, which is next to Egypt, down around Africa back to the Mediterranean Sea. This according to Miles Kell's World History book, page 148 and 149. I'm going to stop the camera. And that was the history part. If you were here for history, you can go directly to the next part of history. If you stay here and participate in the extensive carpine or arm strength training, then it's better your arms. Good and stable standing stance. We're having the arms next to us, hands formed to fists, and we're bringing these fists down. And again up. The flat gate. Now, and we're having 3 rules. The first rule is that we're stopping immediately as soon as there's pain. The second rule is that we're going only as far as we can go with a little bit of effort. And the third rule is that we're not overdoing it. We just want to strengthen, not to exhaust. And now fists and bring them up and down. The counterfight money check. And now you can use a towel, a t-shirt or a sock, and you have it in there, and you press with moderate force onto it or good force, and then you bring the wrist again down in front. So, and again up. Again down. And up. And on the other side, press with good force and bring it down. Evenly pressing with all 5 fingers. And again up. And down. And now take the sock from the top and turn the hand to the outside. And again to the inside. Outside. Only as far as it goes, painless. And inside. Other hand. Press and turn to the inside. And outside. Again inside. And outside. One more time. And now just press and bring this down. Again down. And outside, just press and down. Again down. And now neutral position, just press. And on the other side. And that was the extensor carpet on our strength training. Thank you very much, and next.